Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. Now, I plan to tell you a little bit of my Toastmasters journey this evening and how I won the international speech contest at both club and area level. Now, before I begin, I just want you to imagine for a moment that you are standing in the foyer of the Crown Plaza Hotel, and there's 500 guests who have assembled, and they're all there for a very special event. It's a fundraiser for Macmillan Cancer Support, and it's really special. There's a lot of chitter-chatter going on and a real buzz in the room, and everybody's standing with a refreshment. And if you were there and you looked over to the corner of the room, you would have seen a more nervous version of me standing like this. You see, I had been invited along that day as one of two speakers to give a talk, and I was very, very nervous. And it soon became apparent that the people who were organising the event were a little nervous too, and a little curious. They started to ask me some questions. Eddie, we've had some good speakers and we've had some bad speakers in the past. Some speakers, they've just failed to connect with the audience. They've spoke for too long. They've not made the point really clear. At times, they've made the audience feel a little awkward. So what are you talking about today, Eddie? Wow. Have you spoken in public before, Eddie? How long do you think your speech will be, Eddie? Clearly I wasn't the only nervous person in the room. There was a lot riding on this event. It was an opportunity for them to raise thousands of pounds for Macmillan Cancer Support. It was really important. And in 1 hour's time, I would be taking the stage. And as I did, the microphone was in front of me. There was 1,000 eyes staring back at me. I had 2 VIP guests sitting at this side of me and 2 VIP guests sitting at that side of me. And I decided to clear my throat. And it boomed around the room. The 4 VIP guests suddenly looked up at me. I now had 1,008 eyes staring at me. I was just about to deliver the most important speech ever. What's your most important speech? What's that speech that's inside you? That one that really resonates with you? The one that's bubbling away? The one that's aching to come out? Maybe it's a speech that could inspire others. Maybe it's a speech that someone just has to hear. You see, that speech, I believe, is a speech that could win you the Toastmasters International Speech Contest. But before I go any further, by a show of hands, who actually wants to take part in the Toastmasters International Speech Contest? Everyone. I'm in the right room. Thank goodness for that. Well, I want to try and share some ideas with you that I think helped me and could possibly help you too. But before I do that, would you like to hear the speech, or a version of the speech that I was about to give in the Crown Plaza, and the actual speech that I gave that won the competition? Would you like to hear it?
Oh, yes.
Yes! Thank you. Okay. Well, I'll let you hear that speech now, if you're ready. It was January 2023. It was a new year. And someone had just asked me a question that would change my life. Eddie, what are you doing with your time, your talent, and your treasure to help someone else? It was a thought-provoking question. And then the little devil inside my head woke up and started to laugh. Come on, Eddie. Talent, treasure. Where are you going to find the time? We'll make a committed decision, and the way will be shown the same. I had made a committed decision. And 7 months later, I found myself in the most southerly part of Great Britain, Land's End. I was lined up with experienced cyclists from all around the world. They'd all the gear. 10, 11, 12,000 pound road bikes. And then there was one wee Scot from Glasgow. I had a hybrid bike, a fraction of the cost, and no clip-on cycling shoes either. You could say that I had very little gear, but I had a big idea. And that big idea was to cycle the length of Great Britain, 1,000 miles, for Macmillan Cancer Support. I was ready. We were ready. And then Big Tony from South Africa, he leaned over his bike, he looked down the line, he caught my eye, he smiled and said, "Eddie, that's not a bike, that's a donkey." Ee-aw, ee-aw. And with that, we were on our way, including me and the donkey. Now there was many challenges along the way, but none greater than in day 8 in the Cairngorm Mountains, when we faced the left. They say it's a hill, but when we approached it, it seemed like a wall had just risen from the earth. And I wondered, how am I getting up there? And why am I even here? Now the second question I could answer, I was here because I lost 2 very special people to cancer. My mum Hazel and my mother-in-law Anne. Now my mum's final day, we were alone together in her home. She was tucked up in bed, but she could no longer speak. Cancer had already ravaged her body, and this was going to be a difficult night. My mum was restless, she couldn't settle, she was in some pain. And I decided that I would climb in bed beside her and try and comfort her like she had done for me so many times before as a child growing up. But when I held her body, I just sensed something's not right. And for the very first time, I allowed myself to think that this may be her last night. But I so wanted to let my mum know how important her life had been and what she meant to me. So when the time felt right, I leaned in and I whispered, "Mum, I love you so much. You've been a wonderful mother. You've given me everything I needed. Thank you." And with that, I kissed her. And soon afterwards, she took her final breath, and her pain was gone. Now, one of the phone calls I made that night was to Macmillan's, because without their support, this period would have been so much more difficult. And I always wanted to give something back, to say thank you. And that's why I was on this journey. And that's why I was now facing the left. But how was I getting up there? One pedal at a time. And off we went. We zigzagged up the left. It was so difficult, and one by one, feet came off the pedals and touched the ground. But I was determined I was going to make it up. I even caught up with Big Tony. As I did, I looked over, I caught his eye, I smiled, and I said, "Not bad for a donkey, Tony." And as I passed him by, I shouted back, "Eeyore, eeyore!" But soon afterwards, the little devil was back. "Eddie, take your feet off the pedals. Give them a break. Give up." And just at the very moment I was about to give up, I felt one hand in my back, and then another, and I was gently pushed to the top. I really felt my mum's presence that day, and that feeling. Well, that feeling was enough to see me through the remaining 2 days. When I finally arrived at John O'Groats, I had made it, I'd done it! Now, I was the last cyclist to arrive. The others had been there for some time, but as I approached the finishing line, they all gave me a round of applause. And in a chorus, led by Big Tony, they all sang, "Ee-aw, ee-aw, ee-aw." I was bursting with pride. The tears were streaming down my cheeks, but I had a smile as wide as the Clyde. But more important than all of that was the money raised for McDonald's, because I knew exactly what that would mean to some individual or some family when they would desperately need it. And something else I learned that day was that if I can find some talent and treasure inside me to help others, anyone can. You can. All you have to do is make that committed decision and ask yourself that question. What are you doing with your time, your talent, and your treasure to help someone else? Contest you. And that was my winning speech. Now, I would like to share maybe 5 ideas that I think help me, and hopefully they can help you too. Later on, I will tell you how the Crown Plaza finished that speech, and we can have a Q&A if you have any questions as well. But I just want to share 5 ideas with you. Hopefully you'll get some value out of these ideas, and they may help you in your journey. So, number 1 is a personal story. I think this is really important. The last 5 world champions all had personal stories, every single one of them. And a personal story is really unique. It's original. Only you can tell the story. Nobody else. It can't be copied. And I think audiences and people in general love personal stories. See if you can relate to this. I'm out having a coffee with my wife Karen. We're in the coffee bar, we're enjoying our coffee, and we look around the room. There's a couple over in the far corner. One looks older than the other. We look at each other, smile, and we say, "I wonder what their story is." People watching. We do it all the time. You've probably played that wee game yourself, perhaps. We all love stories. We all love to know what's happening in other people's lives. It's intriguing. So I would encourage you to tell a personal story in your speech. Now, that may make you have to be a little vulnerable, because after all, it's a personal story. But that can get real connection with your audience. And I think that vulnerability can help with my second idea or my second point, which is emotional engagement. Emotional engagement with the audience. See, emotion is such a powerful thing. It can lift an audience up, and you can take that audience with you on your journey. It's really important. So think about your own life when you have had an emotional impact in your life or been emotionally engaged. Think about that first love or first heartbreak. You might even now be able to think back and see that person in front of you, and I hope it's not causing you any bad thoughts.
Too late.
You always remember that because it's in here. Perhaps your firstborn child. Maybe the thought of that is even taking you back to that labour room in that hospital right now. You'll never forget that because it's in here. Or perhaps even the passing of a loved one and the emotions that stirs. You will never forget that because it's in here. Maybe even your first speech. You might never forget that. So, emotional engagement is really important, because if you can do it in the right way, you will be remembered, and so will your speech be remembered. And I think a great way to bring emotional engagement into your speech is my third point, which is struggle and triumph. See, in every great speech, I believe it's one of struggle and triumph. I'm going to take you way back. Alison mentioned 1990. I'm going to take you back further than that, unfortunately. I'm going to take you way back to 1977. I was 8. Hard to believe, I know that. But I was 8, and I was sitting in the cinema. It was a packed cinema. And I was ready to watch one of the first screenings of the movie Rocky. Has everybody seen that movie? Perhaps not. Go and watch the movie. So for those of you that don't know the movie, it's about an amateur boxer who's a bit of a bum. Life has passed him by, but he gets one shot at the World Championship, earning that belt. And he does it. He triumphs, but not before he struggles. Now, when we were watching that movie in the pictures, there's a scene in that movie when Rocky has been battered to the canvas. He is struggling to get up. He's using all his energy and he can't get up. And in the movie, behind the boxing ring, the crowd chant for their hero. Rocky, Rocky, Rocky. You see, they are emotionally engaged. They are invested in their hero's story of struggle to triumph. But amazingly, that magic that day came through the screen and came into the cinema. And everybody in the cinema started shouting, Rocky, Rocky. I've never seen that happen again. I think we're a little bit more reserved in the cinema now. But that day was almost 50 years ago. and it's always remained with me. It's in here. And why? Emotional engagement, personal story, struggle, and triumph. Which leads on to my fourth point, and I think the most important one, and that is your message. See, that's what your speech is all about, your message. You've led up to this point, you've used a personal story, you've got the audience emotionally engaged, you are describing your struggle and triumph, and now you want to deliver that message. Because that's what this is all about. You're trying to get your idea or message out there. Now, I think one of the most effective ways to do that is repetition, repetition, repetition. It's using politics all the time. Politicians use it over and over again. Maybe not to a liking, but we all know about Make America Great Again. We all know about the 20 billion black hole. So I think repetition is really important. My speech, if you think about my speech, my message is in the title. Time, talent and treasure. I use it in the first few lines of the speech, and I close with it in the last few lines of the speech. To try and make that message stick, because I want you to leave the room and have that message in here. And my fifth and final point would be practice, practice, practice. You have to practice. I have never heard a great speech that won't have been practiced and practiced and practiced. It has to be, you just can't turn up and deliver it. You have to practice it. Now, to do that involves an investment of your time, and we're all busy people. So I think you need to get creative about your time. Someone spoke about habits earlier. You need to create habits around your practice. Now that might be standing waiting for the bus. Repeat it in your mind. On that train journey, repeat it in your mind. Standing in a queue, repeat it in your mind. In front of the mirror, repeat it in front of the mirror. Record it on your phone, look back at it, see how you can tweak it. Go to other Toastmaster clubs. Go along and practice it there, get the feedback, tweak your speech where you can and improve upon it. Practice it all the time. I can't emphasise that enough. It's really, really important for your development. So just to recap on that, I believe that these 5 areas will really help you, as they helped me. Personal story. It's personal to you, makes you vulnerable, connects with the audience. Emotional engagement. It lifts your audience up and takes them on the journey with you. And a good way to use that is in that story of struggle and triumph. And then hammer the message home. And you can achieve all that by practice, practice, practice. And I think if you use those and apply those 5 ideas, then they will help you to win the Toastmasters International Speech Contest. So I hope that has been of some value to you. I will open the floor now to some questions if you have any, and then if we have enough time, I'll recap on the Crown Plaza story if you want to hear that or not. But yeah, I really want you to get as most value out of this as possible. So if you have any questions that you want to ask me about the cycle, about the speech, whatever, then feel free to do so. If I can't answer them, then I can't answer them. But I will try my best. So does anybody have any questions or that they want to. Also,
Did you feel emotional delivering the speech when it was about your mum, and how did you deal with that emotion?
I nearly cried there. Yeah, and as I'm thinking about it now, I'm quite emotional about it.
Did you like his handshake? His handshake when he was talking about his mum.
Yeah.
I've seen this speech from beginning to the winning speech at club area and when he was in division, and he's kept it consistent. This speech has been consistent since at club level, and that just shows, like Egg says, he has practiced it so much. He can remember it, and 3 months later, he probably still can remember that speech and deliver it without practice it because he's practiced it so much previously.
Yeah. But it's a really good question, Alison, because the first time I delivered a speech, I think it was in Glasgow Toastmasters, I can't remember, James, if we were there.
I was there.
You were there, and it was very emotional. But it was too emotional. It didn't really deliver the message. Everybody felt sorry for me, and that was a great speech, but it didn't really, you're not really doing a professional job when you let your emotions take over. But then it can go to another extreme, because you can deliver it so much that it loses its meaning. And I felt guilty about that. No, I don't want to give this speech and for it to lose its meaning because it was so important. So I think sometimes when you are practicing it in your house, saying it's not good, it loses its feeling a little bit. But as I'm standing in front of you now, it rises again up within you. So it's a good question, and I suppose you do have to try and control that if you can. You have to. You really have to. But it's a good question. It's a good question. Yes.
How did you feel after winning? Did your life change in any major way, or did you just go back to normal?
Well, let me be completely honest, completely transparent about it. It was a wonderful, wonderful thing to do, and a wonderful thing to achieve. But I'll put it in perspective. I won the club competition, moved on to the area competition, and every round it gets more difficult and the audience gets larger and larger, and then moved on to division, and I never won a division. I came third, behind Mr. McGinty. So I didn't win the world championship of public speaking, but I went up the levels to win it. But yeah, I felt brilliant. I felt really enthralled. See, in the area competition, I don't know if you remember, James, but in the area competition, I lost my way.
I was sat in the front and I saw you losing your way.
Yeah.
So keep going. I was really anxious.
I couldn't remember the next line.
Yep.
And inside, I was panicking. This was the area competition. And inside I was, I've lost it. And I didn't know what to do. And I thought I need to give myself some time. So what I've done, and this is a good tip for you, stay calm and carry on. I walked this way. And I repeated whatever the last line I said was. I repeated it. And I walked this way. Now, at the halfway point of walking this way, what was going on in my mind, I think I told you this, James. I was about to walk off stage. I was ready to apologise and say, listen, I'll try again. But I continued my walk. I repeated the last line again to the audience, came back, and on my way back, I'm now thinking I'm going to exit the stage. It came back to me. And I happened to be back in the middle of the stage again. And I went, and then it just all came. Now, I think everybody thought I'd done a dramatic pause. They didn't realise, I think others maybe who had seen the speech before thought, what's going on here? But others didn't. They didn't know. They just thought this was part of the speech. So it's important. It's an important lesson in that, actually, that don't try not to. It's difficult, but try not to panic. There'll probably if you don't experience that at one point, then it'll be a miracle, I think, because I think we all lose our way at one point. And because we have learned a script to a certain degree, if we miss our line, then we think, oh my goodness, where am I? You know. So that's another important point. It's important to really learn your speech, but also once you've learned it inside out, you've got it memorised, be able to flow around it a little bit is quite a good idea as well. So, but to answer your question, because of the way it happened, when I get out of the building, I skipped on up the road. I was so I phoned Carol and said, amazing. So I didn't start giving autographs or anything like that. There was nothing of that going on. Maybe one day, but nothing. And the red timer is now here upon us. So
You've got a wee bit of time left because we dropped our speaker tonight. So.
well, again, this is about you here. You know, if you've got any questions or maybe challenges that you've had, and you think, oh, how did you
Can I reiterate when Eddie got stuck at area level, I was sat in the front because I'm an HSP, I can soak up people's emotions. I knew he had lost it. And the reason why he got it back is because, have you heard of NLP's move your state in order to move your current, you've got to move in order to move away from your current state. So what Eddie did was, because he moved around the stage, he moved away from his current state, which was he'd lost the plot. So when he moved, he got back into the plot. And that's what you do, you need to move in order to move away from your current state of being lost or losing your train of thoughts. Like Eddie says, you've got to stay calm, deep breathing. And I found that doing daily deep breathing and yoga really helps with the stress and anxiety of public speaking.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, very good point.
Eddie,
Yeah.
in the creation process of that speech, because obviously, you know, that story was less than 0.1% of what actually happened.
Yeah.
I'm guessing when your first draft was about 3 times longer than it should have been.
Yeah, it was.
How difficult was it to let go of some of that material?
Very difficult. Very difficult. In fact, and if you want, I'll tell you about the Crown Plaza speech in a moment, but if you want, I've got a recording of that, I can put it into the chat and you can see it.
Yeah.
It is a little bit different because it's longer. And the reason I mention that is because it was very difficult. It was difficult for me to take that speech and condense it for Toastmasters as well into a 7-minute speech, because I had to throw away stuff that I felt attached to. I thought, I don't want to not say that, but you have to. So that process is, it can be quite brutal, but you have to do it. You then go through your speech line by line. There's maybe 2 things you can do. You can say the same thing in a different way, make it more condensed, and sometimes by doing that it can be more powerful actually. Or you can just ask yourself the question, is it really important that be in there? Because it goes back to that about your message. Is this really helping the message? Is it just because I like saying it, or is it really helping the message? And I think, as James says, you'll always start off with a much longer speech. The speech that you finally deliver, it will be basically the same speech, but it will be condensed. It will certainly be condensed. But it's a difficult process that to go through. Alison?
I was going to say, do you tend to start with the story that you've got and then build the message from the story, or start with the message and then fit a story to it?
Great question.
Because I've tried both and I feel like
Yeah.
the speeches are more powerful when I build the story from the message.
Yeah, I think it's a really great question, and I think you can do both. Actually, I think now ideally, I think you want to start with a message, because that's the thing that's really important to you. That's the thing that you want to put out into the world, I think. but I think ideally you want to start with a message and then build the speech around. But I think you get hunches, don't you? You get little moments of inspiration, and maybe a story might come to you, and then you think, all right, that's a really interesting story. I wonder if I can. Is my message within that story? Oh yeah, it is actually. And then you can start building it around that. So I think you can do it both ways. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's just wondering. I know that's helpful. No, that's helpful. I wasn't sure if it was the right answer.
Yeah.
Maybe you could try both and see what works for you, because what works for Eddie might not work for you, and
I
vice
know.
versa. And plus, gender difference, the brain is wired differently.
Oh, yeah. That's
Women
funny.
seem to focus on more of the details. We ruminate the details. Whereas men, they are very simple. Their brains are hardwired differently. James McGinty can get them to the message, get to the point in 5 words. I need to take 5 years to get to the point because I'm focused on so much detail.
Oh yes.
And we've
James
established
McGinty.
this with other Toastmasters, and they've also strongly agreed. Yes,
that's
you women just
interesting.
focus on far too much detail, so you need to
Yeah.
drop the details. Get to the message
Yeah.
ASAP. 5 seconds you've got. Because your audience is going to get distracted internally and externally, and that's what I'm working on at the moment.
Yeah.
Drop all the non-essentials, you know, the clutter.
Yeah. That's
Can
a
I
good.
ask you,
Yeah.
sorry, I noticed that you've got really good and really natural body movement, just your body language, and that's something that even just in normal speaking, I don't think I move very much. And then when I'm up there, I feel self-conscious because I feel as though I should be doing more with my arms. Is that something that just comes naturally to you, or did you learn that?
So there's 2 things there. You're self-conscious, and your body language doesn't feel as if it's in flow with your speech, perhaps, maybe. So the self-consciousness, I think we all feel self-conscious when we begin to practice speaking in public, and I think it's just experience and that practice. That will help you a lot. And if you come along to Toastmasters, I encourage you to do that. If you come along, then the more you speak, the more less conscious you'll be, less self-aware you'll be. I think that's doing it over and over again. The body language. Yeah, probably if I go back to that first idea that I gave you about personal story, I think body language flows a lot easier when it is a personal story, because you feel it more. I think you feel a personal story more, and when you feel something more, you tend to
Be more passionate.
Yeah, you tend to be more passionate, and I go. But that's what Toastmasters is all about. I mean, your development in Toastmasters can go on forever. Because you can take one thing, body language. I'm going to focus on my body language on my next speech. I'm just going to, nothing else, just my body language. I'm going to try and get it right. Next speech, I'm going to concentrate on my voice, you know, on humour, etc. So it can go on for a long time.
You move to the end now.
Yeah. So, if there's no more questions, I'll just finally recap by saying the Crown Plaza speech, if you remember, there was a bit of nervousness in the air about how it went, and I'm glad to say it went really well. And amazingly, I got a standing ovation at the end of it. And they said that they'd never had that before, so it really hit home. But again, just to recap on that was only because of those 5 points: personal story, emotional engagement, struggle and triumph, the message, and practice. And if there's no other questions, then I'll leave it there.